Hello and welcome, everybody. My name is Justin. I am the host of this event for Automate Office Work. Got a great panel of people, all lawyers and
I'm
heavily
not a
involved
lawyer.
in. Oh, not a lawyer. Okay,
I'm not a lawyer.
heavily
I have to
involved.
say
Me
that. I
neither.
legally have to say that.
Shout it out loud and proud there.
We have a bunch of people who are interested and involved in legal technology. Oh, and that's so diverse that there are some people who went to law school and others who didn't, and that's fine. We all have different areas of expertise. Okay, so everybody is probably already aware of who I am. I'm a lawyer. I quit to automate all of the admin work, more the boring work. Okay, so that's where my interest is, and then we have other people with other interests. My name is Justin. I'm currently in the Netherlands. All right, Kevin.
Yeah, Kevin Keller. I'm the general counsel of Forward Networks. I've been at a lot of the major big tech companies you know of, Microsoft, Amazon, Meta, Instacart, a few others. I've been general counsel a couple of different places. I have a technical background, so I'm very into tech, and more recently, like have brushed up my coding skills and everything that were kind of atrophying after about 30 years from the time I programmed last. And I'm making a lot of legal tech and just fun things on the side. It's been a lot of fun.
Cool. And where are you located?
Oh, sorry. I'm located today in Arnold, California, up in the Sierras.
Beautiful. All right, Nate.
Hi, Nate Kostelnik. I'm a lawyer. Right now I'm in Pittsburgh, and I'm with an international nonprofit. Can't quite follow up with all that Kevin had talked about, but starting a lot with AI and getting involved as best I can.
Right. And I selected you specifically because you're closer to being just your average user, right? And you can have you could have a great conversation with Kevin to let him know, like, hey, like your tech is way too far beyond me. Like you need to like bring it down to like the average person, like So happy to have you. Looks like we lost Srinity. Let's go around. Colin.
Sure. Colin Levy. I'm general counsel of Malbec, a contract lifecycle management company. I'm also the author of the Legal Tech Ecosystem, editor of the Handbook of Legal Tech, and working on another book. Obviously, you probably can guess that I really like to write at this point, or I'm just crazy, or maybe both. I have long been someone who has been eager to help educate and inform others about legal tech. I don't actually have a tech background, though I actually used to kind of fear tech, and now I love it. Kind of just here to help people kind of learn about how to make tech work for them, rather than the other way around.
Beautiful. All right, Serenity is back. Emma.
Hi, me, Justin. My name's Emma Kelly. I live in Washington, D.C. in the U.S. I'm not an attorney, but I've been in the legal industry for almost 20 years at this point, having various roles. I was a librarian at a large law firm. I've worked at a media company in product development and editorial, and worked in business development at various e-discovery and other legal technology vendors. Right now, I have my own consultancy, Quad K, where I work with early stage legal tech companies on go-to-market strategies. And then I also have a venture I'm working on called Sabio S3, working on evaluation of LLMs and LLM-driven products.
Great. Happy to have you. And Serenity.
Hello, I'm the startup builder here, not an attorney as well, just like Emma. I have an interesting background because I did my undergraduate in engineering, never actually worked as an engineer. Most of my career was in finance, but I worked in an area in finance which was very legal heavy, basically leverage finance and bankruptcy practices. So working with companies, going through all of these restructuring deals, which was kind of annoying, going through all the credit docs and stuff like that. And I look at things more from an automation perspective, or leveraging LLMs from strong engineering side of things to help businesses automate a lot of their legal review work.
Great. Happy to have you. So we have a very diverse group of people here who could have a really good conversation, where we get insights on not just talk about like how we see the world, but ask others, like, what are you seeing from this? Like an example would be Srinity with the startup, talking to Colin, who is more in an established traditional, like where do we see the future? Is the future is the future more slow and steady as we've seen it before, or is there like a place to like radically revolutionize everything? But then there's the risk. How do you bring people along with that? Right. So yeah, I'm looking forward to a great conversation. Is there anybody who has a burning question like this that would like to ask others? Or we could also just default to like, hey, where do you see legal tech going right now? It's the end of the summer, and we've got 4 months left in the year. What are we working on, kind of thing? So I'm open to anything. Anybody want to come on?
I would like to start with, something that Justin, you and I were discussing on the hypesters. I mean, the concept of, there's so much hype around, not a lot of like engineering grounding to it. So, different thoughts, viewpoints, examples that you all might have come across. Just curious to know what you've been noticing in the space.
Excellent. Who wants to go?
I'll jump in. I was just thinking about this morning. I am usually, and have been through my career, the cheerleader for a lot of tech. And I think, and AI's been around for a long time. I've been advising on it for 15, 20 years. Just, predictive algorithms, machine learning, computer vision, robotics, all that stuff has been around. But I think this particular large language models got attorneys especially excited because they output the thing that we make our careers around, words and understanding them and spitting more of them out, which we do. And so I find myself, more trying to be more the practical person and say, wait, it doesn't do all those things. It's really good at some very set things, but it's not good at everything. You can't just slap AI on things. And it feels a little bit like right now there's this rush, everyone feeling a little bit of FOMO too about it all, and not really playing with it and getting a sense of what it's good at before they then adopt it, or before somebody then tries to sell something to them. And there's a lot of noise out there. So it's the first time that I'm like trying to be sort of more the grounded as opposed to the pure cheerleader. And I do make a lot of stuff, and I'm out there on LinkedIn a lot about it, but that's kind of the sense I get right now. And I think if you're not as into the tech too, you're probably being inundated by this AI, and it's very hard to have the time to evaluate all these offerings. So that's where I kind of see the hype cycle right now.
Show of hands, who all agrees with Kevin?
And it's hard not to.
Yeah. I think we all agree. Is there anybody with like a different viewpoint, or like you could say like, I agree with Kevin, but
Grand.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to say something, but I don't think this is necessarily disagreeing with Kevin. It's just reiterating his point in a different way, which is to say that AI, I think, is just, well, it's interesting and fun. It has generated even more noise and hype than any other prior tech. And I think the problem with that is it's harder than ever for people to actually understand what it's truly capable of and what is just kind of just noise and Hollywood-esque movie-like talk. And I think that's going to be increasingly a problem because, well, it's getting people excited. It's also setting them up in some ways for failure in terms of their expectations of what AI and really what any other technology can do, which is not to say it's not powerful. It is. But it's not this kind of one-size-fits-all technology that can just magically do anything you want without having to give it any thought. and it's also not perfect. And the lack of its imperfection actually, I think, is the hardest thing, I think, especially for lawyers to come to grips with, because they think that they have to be perfect and therefore anything they use has to be perfect. And that's just not the case. They're not perfect and the technology isn't either.
As Colin was saying, that I had a thought, and it's that one of the ways that I feel like I learned contracts, and that's kind of my specialty, or one of my specialties, was that I went through the grinder, and there were moments of, oh crap, where did I draft that, and people are fighting over it, and oh my gosh, did I get it right? And it just cements these learnings in your head, and you have to work with things to get to those moments that you learn those things, and stock away the wisdom that you gain over time. And so even with AI, you have to be in there playing with it and realize, and have to sometimes fail and not do the job. And so you test the boundaries of it that way, and you get to a point where now I'm using it. So I started, vibe coding, like a lot of those, creating things to try to get myself back to the groove, and then quickly ran into the situation where you get this thing and it looks beautiful, and then you say, wait, I want to add this feature, and then you realize when you add that feature, you pulled some threads in this code that you don't really understand, and it all fell apart. And the same can be true of contracts or something like that. You build a contract and it looks beautiful on the outside, and then you change something, or it's got something missing there, and when it actually functions, when it actually works, it crashes, and there are problems. And I think you have to go through some of that, of playing with it and finding out where it crashes and burns, to be able to actually then know how to really deploy it usefully. And for now I have to engage my brain quite a bit, is what I'm doing coding, to really get my mind completely around it, so that those things don't happen. But it's by knowing that's how it works, and that's what its failings are, and that's where its weaknesses are. Now I can wrap my mind around it and use it completely as a tool, without running into it. But I there's, again, the hype cycle so much that people are almost paralyzed by the hype. Emma,
yeah, I'm just agreeing with you, but it just makes me think about your point where there's a hype cycle, but people don't really understand what these tools are capable of and what they can do. So I think also, kind of to your point, Colin, and you're kind of hinting at it, these tools are non-deterministic, right? Like an LLM is non-deterministic. Attorneys especially are used to having a tool. Like if you are doing traditional legal research, that's where I started my career, and you are just using Westlaw or Lexis, you do a Boolean search, you're going to get the same answer each time, right? It's deterministic. I am looking for this. I'm looking for X. I will get X. With an LLM, it doesn't work that way, because it is probabilistic. So I think, to your point, there is this huge gap then between what people think it can do and the capabilities, and then what it can actually do, and not understanding how to work with it. So to your point, when you were learning contracts, for instance, and relearning code right now, you're doing that kind of back and forth, and that's how you have to work with an LLM if it's going to be productive for you. And with the hype cycle, I think people aren't realizing that. They think it's kind of a magic box, and I just put my query in the magic box and it produces a magic answer, and I can go on my merry way, when it's not really how it works.
Yeah, and to that point, I mean, I don't have the tech background, but that is how it feels. To Kevin's point earlier, it generates words, and that's what we work with. And so, in a way, it does feel like magic, and it looks so polished. It looks done. You put your guard down because you don't feel like you have to apply that critical eye. But then the first time you plug in a clause and you have it, generate something, and then you do it again, and it's something different, it's eye-opening. And that's something that you don't feel like you should have to do, because it does feel like that magic box. So that's been a challenge for me, working with the contracts and just redoing it to see the difference.
And could you imagine if you were a junior, right? Like, you're very experienced, Nate, Kevin, you're very experienced at contracts, Colin, you're very experienced. Could you imagine being a junior, putting this in, not really understanding? It looks good, right? And humans are trained, like, we're evolutionarily trained to respond to language in this way, right? That's kind of what's different from other versions of AI we're familiar with. Like I've worked with machine learning for over 10 years at this point, right? Like I'm very familiar with the concept of AI. But with LLMs, it's different because it seems like it's communicating with us. And a lot of the weighted system prompts are leaning towards sycophancy, right? And they're learning, they want to be right, they want to be convincing. So if you don't know what you're looking for, or even sometimes if you do know what you're looking for, like things that I'm a subject matter expert in, I'll get something back from an LLM and I have to do a second look because I'm like, wait a second, I fooled it first. And then I'm like, oh, wait, I really need to go through this with a fine tooth comb because this is not right.
This really does feel, and I've just expressed this before to folks, that this is one of the first technologies that actually really benefits, if they lean into it, those with experience, because one, you have the experience to actually gauge the output and engage with it and say, does this look right? Let me run the logic that I typically use if I were to draft it myself, if I were to see it from another side. So you have that experience, but you also, ideally along the way, you've worked with a lot of people and you've managed people and you've set expectations, but then you've also double checked work and everything. And so if you're a good mentor, and I think if you're a good mentor, you work great with other people, you're going to start engaging with these. You realize, one, they're all trained on slightly different data and they all have, in a sense, a personality. And that's anthropomorphizing a little bit, but they all respond slightly differently. One of the fun things I do is, with the local AI I'm using, like with Misty or one of these others, is you can set up like a split and you can ask like 5 different models the same question. And you can, to Nate's point, get different outputs. But that's like having a panel of junior people. Hey, give me your best shot at a clause. And then as a senior person, taking those and melding them together as you need to create something, but a lot faster, because drafting something from whole cloth sometimes is what takes a lot of time, and analyzing it and changing it slightly may be easier once you have experience. So learning how to use it, but learning that you might already innately have some of the skills necessary to engage with it. But the way we talked about it, prompt engineering can be also, like, I think for people who aren't familiar with tech, like engineering, like it sounds like a harder thing than just having a conversation with a tool that in some ways acts or could be treated like a junior team member. And if you treat it that way and you prompt it and you engage with it, to Colin's earlier point about you have to follow up and everything, I think is the way to look at it. But it is a technology that's interestingly beneficial to those who have some experience if they engage with it.
Right. And I would say that the engaging is often, I think, the most challenging part for a lot of folks, because especially legal oriented folks, because that involves something that they have been trained to not do, which is experiment. They don't want to experiment. They want to do what they know is going to work because that's what they're trained to do, and they don't want to fail per se. Yet when it comes to AI, you got to fail. That's how you're going to learn. That's how you're going to learn how to work with it. That's going to help you learn how to make it work for you. And so you have to, as I like to sometimes say, be comfortable getting uncomfortable. That's just, I think, the way it is. And that's even more reason for why I think it's important to kind of cut through the noise and have folks really learn what this technology is, what it does, what it can do, what it can't do, because everyone really should be using it, because it's not going in a way, and also it's as bad as it's ever going to be right now. It's not going to get any worse. It's just going to get better. And in some ways, I think, where we are right now is where the internet once was, in terms of being clunky and somewhat hard to use. I think what's happening is that it's just things are progressing just a little bit faster than they were with the internet. But perhaps, in some people's minds, it's not progressing fast enough. But that's a whole separate issue.
Yeah, I think there's also, there's the point that someone made somewhere on LinkedIn, is that, it's challenging for adoption because, now lawyers will have to double check the output, and now they're, double time, and now I have to review it. And what's the point of the efficiency that I'm now losing having to do this? But I think, Colin, your point is the response is it's better to do it now and get that learning under your belt, see where it's failing, and figure out how you can improve it. So you don't lose that efficiency next time, because it's only going to improve in 6 months or even less.
And that's a good point that Nate made. I'm sorry, am I?
Oh no, I was gonna say it's a good point too. So go for it. But
yeah, I think in particular that sometimes it's we can look at it as people not wanting to engage or being fearful of the technology, but I think there's also, with attorneys, to Nate's point, an efficiency thing. Like, I've got a way of doing things. I know it works, and and I have limited time. Like, how much time and mind share do I give to this new thing to engage with it? Because it's going to take some of that mind share and time, and I'm not going to be as efficient as I typically am. I may get massive efficiency gains once I figure it out, but that's uncertain. So attorneys, again, don't like to necessarily work it in certain uncertainty, and so they lean into like, hey, this works for me, I'm going to stick with it. So it's how do you get people to engage? To Colin's point, this is probably the time to do it, because it's not going to slow down. It's not going to go away. So it's time.
Yeah, I think that speaks to 2 points. So one, change management for anything, right? Like, we all have our routines, both personally and professionally, and how we like to do things. I know, I can be set in my ways in certain things. And I'm sure if somebody looked at my workflows for some things, they'd be like, Emma, this is insane. What are you doing? There is a way easier way of doing this, but because I know exactly how I'm doing it and what I'm doing, it's very fast for me. And it's, you said, Kevin, that the opportunity cost for changing, right? Where I have to sit down, I have to relearn a new workflow, force myself to change, all of that. It's hard for people. And I think it's especially hard for attorneys who are under a lot of time constraints, both in-house and in law firms, which kind of leads to my second point, where I think when you have a billable hour pressure, like at a law firm, it's the opportunity cost is much higher, because there's literally a number on it for your time, for whether or not you could have the time to play around for this, and also the time to verify your outputs, right? And make sure that the LLM's working the way you want it, the tool's working the way you want it, if you have an LLM-based tool. And so if you have a billable hour requirement and you already have your workflows in place and you know how to do what you're doing, it is much tougher to get that change management, even if that might turbocharge your practice going in the future. You don't necessarily want to do it now. And I'm very sympathetic to that. But I think to Nate's point, and Colin's point, you kind of got to do it now if you want the benefits later.
I'm also wondering about this, like, speed of change, like the idea of incremental change that brings the people along, where they like slowly adapt with it and go with you, versus like huge amounts of change where it gets amazingly better, but nobody can follow it, So any thoughts on that? And I'm also thinking about like Srinity. She's developing a startup. Which path do you go down? Do you go down the slow and stable, which maybe Colin's product is also big and traditional, and it's kind of stable. So for Srinity to compete against that, she kind of has to diverge and actually go in the disruption stage. But that's also hard and difficult. And at the same time, Colin can't just sit there and stagnate. He's got to be innovating as well. But it might be innovation in a larger organization that is set might be difficult as well.
Yeah. I mean, as someone who's worked both for huge organizations and now currently for a smaller organization, I've seen exactly what you just described, Justin, in terms of the pace of change being drastically different. At the large organizations, change was happening, but it was kind of in fits and starts, and different sort of functions within the org would be more apt to change more quickly, and then others would be playing catch up, and then the roles would be reversed, and then there'd be, sometimes corporate politics involved, which I won't get into here, and all that fun stuff. Whereas now for me, change is essentially embedded in the business model. It's just an inherent part of how we operate. And if we're not changing, the question isn't, why we're not. The question is, how can we ensure that we are changing to adapt? And certainly with the rise of generative AI, that's certainly been part of recent change in terms of incorporating it in whatever ways we can into existing solutions and then building new solutions based off of it. So,
I mean, I think about what I've done in my personal life, and I remember a while back when I changed my iPhone layout to prioritize ChatGPT as opposed to Chrome or Safari, where now that's the first place I go to. So that was pretty quick, I think, for me. But then I compare that to, organizationally, what we have, we're still in Word, we're still in some of the more, traditional platforms. And I wonder how that switch is going to happen, because it seems like that should be going maybe faster, or if it's not, is still inevitable in a different way. I know all the legal tech platforms have a Word add-in, but I sometimes wonder if that's going to go the way of Safari and Chrome on my phone. I don't know.
I think my point of view here is a little more conservative, even though I am a startup builder, and the reason is that I probably am over indexed on the engineering part, or what is achievable, what is not. And when I see too much use of ChatGPT, I'm not comfortable with that, because I understand what it can do well, what it cannot do well. For example, someone was trying to figure out time difference using ChatGPT, and it gave the wrong answer. And I was like, why wouldn't you use Google or something, that will actually pick out a time calculator instead of, using ChatGPT? And it's more like the technologists understand certain aspects of the technology, which, people who are using it for the first time, probably it's not that apparent to them yet on the weaknesses. Since you've used deterministic tools, like Emma said, all your life, it is hard to have this probabilistic tool and not psychologically feel as though it can also give you the same output like every other tool before this has given you. So that becomes my concern with too quick of an adoption. And I personally am very focused on scaffolding around the LLM to make sure you're not prompting, you don't have to do any of that, you're getting very automated outputs, and the engineering side of the platform is actually taking care of those things for you.
Yeah, I think that it's going to be interesting to see how the technology evolves, but I think right now there's a lot of heavy lifting that users have to do. It's moving really fast, and as somebody who started their career in the .com flurry, and everything was a cyber this, cyber that. Now everything is an AI this, AI that. So it's like seeing the movie play again, only faster, and faster speed. It's like 2x or 3x speed. How a lot of people listen to their Spotify and podcasts, but that's what it seems like. And but the interfaces are a little bit like the AOL, back to the internet tie-in as well, discs that we all got. And it's Srini and others that are kind of creating more deterministic, at least as much as you can, using them as engines for doing different functions within an application, but not necessarily having the user have to interface with them in a way that the user then has to figure out the personality and figure out the right combination of words to use with them. And we'll get there to that point where, behind the scenes, maybe you're taking what the user is saying and trying to determine the intent and then accomplish that intent within your application. For now, the user has to be a lot more clear about their intent when engaging directly with these AIs, and has to be mindful about what the possible outputs might be and what deficiencies there might be because of the deficiency potentially of what you've just asked. Again, back to experience in knowing how to say, hey, I want this, but I want it done this way, and here's the process I want you to follow, and here's the work product along the way, and spelling it out a lot more. That's a lot of work, right? When you're engaging with the junior person on a team. It's a lot of work when you're engaging with the tool. And so I do think the next wave of legal technology is probably engineering better user interfaces and a lot easier way for people to engage with them. So I'm of two minds as to whether fast adoption right now, I think you need to be playing with it. I don't know that your organization necessarily has to be adopting the latest, greatest thing from Harvey or whoever it is, because that's pretty costly. And I think it's probably, V 0.5 of where we will be in a year from now.
And
Yeah,
so Nate, sorry. Go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry. I was just going to say to your point about adoption, Kevin. I thought that was interesting, just because I think you're very right on that. That kind of to everyone's point earlier, we're getting a lot of FOMO, right? Where people with the hype cycle, like, oh my gosh, I have to get on this AI train. I went to ILTA a few weeks ago and just talking with some people who were like, okay, the mandate from my company was I gotta go talk to everyone who does AI. And it's kind of like, why, right? Like, are you looking to solve a particular problem, or do you just want to say, hey, I'm on the cutting edge, I've adopted AI, or I hear everyone else is doing it. So not adopting Harvey or any of these other large platforms or any of these tools that are specifically AI just to adopt them, I think is right, because kind of to our point, as we've been discussing, is people probably aren't going to use it if you don't enforce that change management or try to figure out how that's going to look. You're just going to have a vanity platform that you're spending, tens of thousands of dollars on, that you may or may not have some power users, but you're not necessarily going to have firm-wide adoption. But yeah, finding like a niche use case, I think, is the better option there. Like finding one part of your the legal practice or one thing that you could use it for, or maybe even if you're a smaller firm, like a back office function or something, like where it's like, okay, the AI is going to help me out in this way instead of trying to do everything at once.
Yeah, and I'm by no means saying don't engage with it and play with it.
Yeah.
Everyone should.
If you want Harvey, please buy it.
Yeah, fine. Well, I don't even mean that. I mean just AI.
Yeah.
Like, go get yourself, especially if you're uncomfortable with reality and the types of questions or anything, go get yourself a local AI. This could be anything. LM Studio. There's a bunch of them. They're free. Download, a bunch of models. It's so user friendly. You don't have to be able to go into Terminal and if you don't want to. But you can do it for free. You can then do these split conversations. You can play with it, see what it's good at and all that. You should absolutely be doing that. But should you be adopting somebody's tool right now? Maybe not until you have that use case and you know what you're using it for, and you know that you know that there's going to be an efficiency gain and all this, as opposed to just doing it for doing its sake. That's why I run into a lot of AI policies. Everyone's like, I've got to have an AI policy, and they don't understand AI. They draft a policy, get it approved at the highest levels of their company, and now you're engaging with that company that has an AI policy that makes no sense. It says you can't use AI in your products. It's like, okay, what AI? Like spell check, like autocorrect, like what parts of AI? And so that's.
Don't get me started on that.
It's
hilarious. I think it's hilarious to us who have known AI has been in all these things for ages. Yeah. Where it's like, don't use AI. It's like, what do you mean?
What do you mean? We all are using it everywhere all the time. So yeah, it's that quick adoption without thinking about it. So go out and play with it for sure, but think about, pausing before, some, especially super expensive. There are some very expensive solutions out there that I don't think are much more than wrapping a wrapper around GPT or Claude in the background right now. So.
I agree with Kevin as well, because when I see a lot of what he mentions as the wrapper technology, I don't have a problem with anything being a wrapper. My problem mainly is that if you're paying so much money to buy a chat box kind of system and you need to write these lengthy prompts and get the system working, why not just do it on like the normal enterprise grade subscription versions of the other, like the base models themselves? Like that makes no sense to me at all, and it seems more like a distribution success or like a marketing success at this point, if like the user is so inundated with bearing the burden of getting the system working, and the user is also paying so much money in the process of doing this?
Yeah, I mean that's one of the questions I kind of have. I'd be curious to hear what Colin thinks as well. Is with the larger models, and then you compare a lot of the legal tech tools out there now. Is there a day in a year where legal tech just can't compete with the larger models? Everybody can just use ChatGPT, Claude, and those wrappers just don't really have a place. I know obviously Malbec does CLM and a whole bunch of other stuff. But I think one of the questions is ChatGPT and Claude just going to replace everything? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard others ask that question. I don't pretend to have a definitive answer, but my current thinking, at least, is that AI is going to be integrated closer, more tightly into these products, but I don't think it's going to completely just do everything under the sun, because I think there's still going to be a need for some degree of human judgment and intervention. And that's because AI can't replicate the same sort of human thinking process and human awareness that exists. I mean, hell, brain scientists don't even know how our brains work fully in terms of us being aware of ourselves. So we don't know that, then we can't replicate it. So I do think there is definitely going to be that challenge. And that's, will we eventually overcome that at some point? I think it'd be silly to say, oh, that will never happen. But I don't foresee it happening anytime soon, per se. But I definitely think there needs to be a awareness of sort of what AI is capable of doing well, and that's changing, versus what it can't do well, which is also changing. I don't know if that fully answers your question, but that's kind of where I'm at with it right now.
I think what I'm hearing is that there's a need for people with like voices like ours that are out there, and like, so there's not just this one single voice of hype. There's people saying use it with reason, use it in the right way. It's a tool, and we need more voices like ours.
Since there's a silence here, I'll jump in and I'll say, like, there are definitely, like, when I think about as a general counsel, technology that makes a lot of sense for me. CLM solutions, managing my contracts, absolutely. And one that just says it's magically is an AI, and the AI does it all. I don't at all. As an engineer, I look at you and say, shut, you're not a good engineer, even if you say that. Because they just don't. But these CLM solutions that have been built up, Malbec and others, there's a lot of technology there. There's a lot of like integrating with systems, and that's hard work, and that exists. Now, can they leverage AI then to make the contracting process even better and take out even more friction out of it? Absolutely. And I think you're going to see that incrementally. But these, people who just drop in and have never drafted a contractor in their life, or they've drafted a handful of them before they create a contracting solution and they say they have a CLM, I'm very skeptical of those sort of things. But ones that have been built up and they're not all the AI hype, think are better. The other things that, as a GC that help me a lot are streamlining solutions. Flank OS, which used to be Legal OS, Streamline and others, anything to automate like all the intake and things like that. And that's not a lot of AI. You can inject AI. And one of the things I've created, just as a side project for myself, was to inject some AI to take a first pass at some of the questions that I got through Slack and all of that from folks, so that I could kind of automate the noise. Most of that system is deterministic. Most of that system is about architecting to get data flows going the right way and everything. And there's just a little bit of the LLM taking a first pass using my documents and data. And so I think there's a lot of room for using it existing systems and things that help you out right now. So if I'm gonna, as a general counsel, looking at things to purchase, CLM solutions, automation solutions, but not necessarily to just say AI is going to do it all for you. The ones that actually have done the hard engineering work to integrate with the systems I use and pull the information that I need, and then maybe use AI to do analysis of it to some degree. That helps move along my analysis and helps me get there faster. But that's how I'm looking about as adopting legal tech as a general counsel, because I have a budget that I have to manage, and I have to actually show that there are results from these things as opposed to just the hype. So again, but I think we'll get there to more and more sophistication, but I think it's going to be by layering on top of systems that are harder to build, that aren't as flash in the pan and as hypey. But yeah, that's where I am as a GC on this.
That's interesting. I think that kind of points to some of the more interesting products that are on the market. I think the next wave is not going to be these GPT wrappers, as you've been saying. Like, you see a lot of these, and I think that's where you get these negative comparisons for the tools on the market versus the platforms themselves. And then if you don't understand how to use a general purpose GPT, then you're going to say AI doesn't work for me. I don't like this. I'm really interested in the tools that are going deep right now, right? Or the ones that are trying to get integrated in the system. And the LLM is a tool within the system, right? It's powering certain aspects of the tool and trying to solve a discrete problem versus just being an LLM for the sake of LLM. So I think that's really interesting perspective there, Kevin. And I see that how the market is turning, and I'm already seeing kind of this like next generation of legal tech products aren't just, the LLM wrappers that we saw before, but are I have a little more juice to them.
And Colin, maybe, you can speak to kind of, Malbec, and you're very aware of the CLM landscape, how that's shaping, because I have seen, because we evaluated CLM tools when I came on board at the beginning of the year as GC, and did a full, analysis against our needs and stack ranked and weighted. Rob Donaldson, my team, did a fantastic job on it. But, there were a mix. There were the folks who'd been there for a while making CLM solutions before LLMs were really a big thing and are attacking them out. And there's some that are just dropped in and they're all AI forward. I think the ones that we kind of landed on as the final group that we were considering tended to be ones that were more into the rest of the tech and integrating it. And we actually in the stack ranking of our needs downplayed AI, and said, look, that might be beneficial at some point to us, the attorneys, but what really matters the most to us is how the rest of our team engage with this, how the sales team can engage with it in Salesforce and all of this. And the AI stuff we really downplayed and said if it didn't have any, we'd be okay with that. But if it's smartly added, then that's a bonus for us, but it's not something we need. How do you see that kind of playing out with these, it's hard to say legacy tools because CLM's not that old, but in the hype cycle and everything, it is. But how do you see how folks are embedding it now and what the best use cases are and all that in your world?
Yeah, largely it's a matter of maturity of the organization and also the size and capability of the organization. We have some that are very, we've dealt with some companies that are very large and very sophisticated and have a very specific idea, which is actually very helpful for us in terms of what they want from sort of AI in the contract management realm. And then we have other companies that are kind of like, yeah, we don't want AI. We just want to get our processes automated and just have things just kind of work. And we're more than, in terms of Malbec's approach, we're more than happy to work with either. We also, one of the reasons why I worked for Malbec and brought me here is I'm not trying to kind of hype us. I'm actually just trying to just state the culture here is that we're very upfront about sort of what we do and don't do well. And if we feel like we can't do something well that someone's asking us for, we're like, yeah, we're not the right ones for you. And so I do think that that level of honesty and transparency is important in CLM, because there are a lot of companies that we've encountered that want to incorporate one, but their workflows are a mess. Everything is just all over the place, and a CLM is not going to fix any of those problems. It just is not. So we are not shy about saying, okay, well, if you want, that's fine, but we're not going to sell it to you until you get your house in order, because this is just not going to. This is going to be an expensive boondoggle, and it's not going to lead anywhere. And organizations sometimes don't like hearing that because they want to get to the fun part, but they're not going to have any fun if their problems are only exacerbated by putting yet another tool on top of it. The other thing I would mention as well is that integrations and kind of not having to leave your existing tech stack is something that's increasingly important in the CLM space and likely in other spaces as well. In other words, you don't have to leave whatever tool you're using to go use the CLM, because no one wants to have a million different logins. And so, building out connectors that are more than just connectors or kind of integrators is important as well, because I think that reduces the learning curve and allows for people to kind of work within something that they know while adding functionality to it.
Yeah, that's interesting. So it's almost a different type of FOMO. You see this a lot in, any sort of tech buying within companies where they think this tool is just going to save them. When, as you said, like they just want to get to the fun part and they think I could just throw money at this problem, when they have a lot of they have to get their house in order. They have to figure out where all their contracts are. They have to figure out where their data is. They have to hire Justin to help them do all of this. But I think that's totally right. And then you see that with any sort of AI adoption, right? Kind of to Kevin's point where he was talking about looking at GC, looking at how AI can help integrate within the actual systems they have. If you don't have a system in place, then you don't really have anything to integrate into. It's the garbage in, garbage out problem. And as you said, you see that in the CLM industry, you see that any AI, any sort of tech. So that's definitely an impediment to any sort of adoption or change. So everybody get your house in order and hire Justin.
Is there a place for AI to help get people's house in order? Or is there a place for like a startup to go into this space and help people get their house in order? It's not the fun stuff, but you need it.
I think yes. As you were saying that, I was thinking, one of the things I often do now, and I think it's brilliant that they added this, which is the voice interfaces with these. And it's not super hard from a technical perspective, but it took a little while. But being able to actually just talk out loud and talk through your process and whatever that might be, and then say to the LLM, hey, break this down, try to make sense of this. And and it's one thing to ramble it off and you can think about it, and then you have an aside and all this, but it gathers all that together and can help organize it. And I think that can be really useful to like start to talk through your process. How do we do these things? And I mean, it's definitely what you do with someone like Justin as well, and they may be better at actually pushing you to ask you the questions that get the information out that would make it holistic. And I think that's where, it breaks apart for you doing it directly with an LLM yourself. If you've never done this sort of flesh out my process and put it all together so I can figure out how to embed tools in my practice. But yeah, I think a first pass with AI though is not a bad place to start for folks, and then bring in someone who can then push you a little bit and ask, well, is that always the case? Like, what are the edge cases? And start to really get a picture of how your team is working, and then start to figure out the tools that make the most sense and will have the most bang for the buck.
Yeah, and to that point, go ahead.
Go ahead, Nate. Sorry.
I was going to say I get that benefit maybe as a non-technical user, even just floating something to ChatGPT. And the benefit I see is that if I say, here's the scenario I have, help me automate this. Whereas maybe, Kevin would know what tools to go out and could build it yourself. I couldn't do that. So I get the feedback from ChatGPT and it'll say, You can do option 1, which is really easy in Power Automate. 2, you could go out and do this coding. Option 3, you could go out and buy some of these free tools or low-cost tools. And so I get that feedback. So now I can see the options that make sense to pursue, whereas before I wouldn't have had that. So it's a great springboard for me to even just start exploring that.
I don't know how many of you saw the latest South Park episode. They're always very crass and everything, but it definitely leaned into the sycophancy, being sycophantic. And I would say, like, the only addition I would add to that, what Nate said, is to, like, then put on your other hat, right? We do that a lot as attorneys, and put on our legal professionals, put on your other hat and say, I don't like that idea. I think there are problems with it. Or even take it to another LLM and say, yeah, I got this from this, but I don't trust it. What do you think? And put it in the mindset of, like, trying to poke holes in it and flesh it out. So that's how I use them too, is like almost like against each other. Even when I'm coding, like, Claude says this is really good, but I think there are flaws in the logic. What do you think? And or I think that this isn't modular enough, or whatever. And you start to get better and better because you're challenging it to be sycophantic in a way that actually benefits the critical thinking process. So I'd add that. Just think about it as a critical thinking process. You've got these things that want to please you. Well, get them to please you by poking holes in your in what you've suggested, and that's actually a really useful way to engage with them. You might actually be able to find the flaws in your logic, flaws in your thinking, the gaps in and all that. And the same could be true with these tools. Like, hey, could this? But would it really do that? What are the areas in which it wouldn't work, and start to probe that way. But you can really get to some great solutions.
Absolutely. I completely agree. It actually drives me up a wall that these sort of easy to access tools are so eager to please us. I'm like, I don't want a yes thing. I want somebody that's going to say, actually, this is crap. You should be doing not maybe to the extent to which Grok, for example, does it, but just something that's a little more less eager to please. It's really just bothersome, and it leads people astray, to your point, Kevin. And one way I try to get around it a little bit is have it challenge itself a little bit with its responses. I also have it say, all right, here's what I'm trying to do. Create a prompt to achieve this, and then asking it, does this actually achieve this? And then iterate that way. Because I don't know about you, but I don't really have all the time in the world to figure out the best prompt to use. So I just am like, all right, well, let me have it do this work for me. But yeah, I'm surprised that more folks haven't sort of discussed or acknowledged the fact that these tools are so eager to just kind of make you happy.
Yeah, I will say it is a good self-esteem boost once in a while. When you're having a bad day, just go out and be like, yeah, I am great. Thank you so much. And then I go back to being like, no, you have to be mean to me again. Yeah, it's not talked about enough. And I mean, I've seen people kind of, let's say, you got to look at it as an overeager intern, right? But even then, I don't think I'd want an overeager intern to be that sycophantic and
overconfident
over me. It is very strange and off-putting, and I don't understand the system weights behind it, why you would want it to be that eager and sycophantic, but here we are. But yeah, it's not talked about enough, and it's to your point, it's not particularly helpful in legal.
Yeah. In essence, it's not the best colleague, right? The best colleagues are the ones who challenge you, challenge you critical thinking and say, well, and don't make it personal. It's not you're an idiot, but the idea is not well thought through. It's not backed by facts. That's what you want.
Yeah, like if you're a contract, right? If you're trying to figure out the right clauses, if you're trying to test, like, how does this work in our negotiating strategy? Or how does this affect the company? Like, you don't want to just put in something in it to say, like, that's a great idea. And you're like, no, tell me what's wrong with it. Red team it, battle test it. Or if you're a litigator, I see a lot talking about bias in LLMs, which is a huge concern. But bias could be good if you're a litigator, if it's going to test out your biases, or you could try to figure out then the biases of the judge or the jury or whoever you're trying to make the argument for, and test out your arguments. But it's not as useful then if it's just going to fawn over your arguments.
It's now 5 o'clock. If there's anybody on who needs to leave to go to some other appointment, feel free. Otherwise,
I can
whoever
stay for a
wants to
few more
stay on can
minutes.
stay.
I can stick for
I
a little
need to
bit.
go. Sorry, but great fun with you all. Thanks for putting this together, Justin.
Thanks for putting us all together, Justin. I don't think I've had
My pleasure.
the pleasure of chatting with everyone on here. So thank you.
No, certainly.
I
haven't.
know all of you guys individually, and I thought I should get you together.
Love it.
It's been
It's
great.
a good mix
Thank
of
you,
people.
everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll stay on as well for anyone who wants to.
Yeah.
Shreen, what are you building? We didn't really get to what
Yeah.
you're building.
Yeah. Really cool.
That's true. I try to keep it, low key. I want to absorb information first before giving information out. But the idea is to have business teams self-serve as much as they can with routine contracts, for example. And the crux of this is that it can't work like an LLM chat box or something that's very probabilistic. It needs a high level of engineering force so that you get consistency in results, and we've been able to achieve that. And the like, as you said, like I wanted to mention it, but my internet connectivity was bad. I do say AI powered and stuff like that on my website because at a certain level I feel like I need to say it, otherwise people are not going to take this seriously. But the AI part actually only is 35% of the whole process. It was more about how do I use the Microsoft Word, which is a closed source system, and how do I like search better than Copilot can do itself. And like when we achieved that, like that was like a big leap for us. But it has nothing to do with AI. Like it has to do more with text search, etc., etc. And then role-based access control. So not anyone can go and edit the rules within the dashboard, and things like that, which actually require more engineering capabilities than just like putting an LLM out to run there.
The most interesting thing for me is that still today, I have not seen a CLM, a contract solution that is nearly as sophisticated or as good as the one that Amazon built internally without AI at all. And it's all just automating like very sophisticated playbacks with fallbacks upon fallbacks and automating the approval process. Like if you and tracking metrics on it. So if you're a sales team manager, your sales team can go in and they can build their own contract using the clauses that are there baked into the system and making exceptions for their particular customer with the right approval. So they might want to make a change to the indemnification, and that requires a VP approval. Those are all tracked. So at the end of the day, the leader can say, this salesperson closed this many deals, and they closed a lot more than everybody else, but they gave a lot away. Like the risk level on their contracts, I can actually look at that and see. But I can also see across my organization, everyone's getting exceptions to this. We're always doing this across the organization. So why don't we then change that and make that our baseline so we can streamline the contracting process and not have to negotiate that every time? And that's where the legal team then gets involved. And what's the fallback to that? Or is that acceptable? What's the risk level? But it was all, none of it was AI generating anything, but it's super sophisticated. It's super streamlined. It makes contracting there. There's very few times the legal team gets involved in negotiation because they don't need to. The business team can negotiate contract, put in a fallback with the right approval. Some of them require legal approval, but that's super sophisticated. It's been in existence. I joked with David Sapolsky. I said, you guys could like dominate the legal tech field by putting out your own internal solutions because they just work and they're fantastic and get them picking up market for us.
Justin tried. I was talking to Justin, and looks like he tried to do this back in the day with simpler systems within his own firm. And like even like for us, we do use AI for analytics, but it's not generative AI. It's like more predictive, like the older versions of AI. The other thing that annoys me is when people behave as though AI is a new thing. Like nothing like annoys me more than that, because it's literally been around for so many decades, like different forms of it.
It looks like we might have lost her, at least paused her there. I agree with her though. Like, Google, I tell people, you've been using Google for so long, their algorithms are predictive algorithms. What's the most likely, thing, right? back in 2009 or 10, you know, we were introducing to the Amazon Kindle Fire for the first time, a tablet. Last minute, I want to put this browser on it, and the browser was it predicted what the next possible website you were going to go to was, and pre-cache operated really fast. That was the whole premise. Is back when the internet was a little bit slower, back in the 2009-10 timeframe, how could you like predictively cache and make the browsing experience just magical? Just like I click on this and boom, it's there. And that was predictive algorithm. There was a lot of privacy issues and things related to getting that launched, but you know, those predictive algorithms have been around for a long time. Computer vision's been around and gotten more sophisticated, all this. So I agree with you. It's kind of annoying when people get the new thing, but it's kind of captured people's imagination because of the link.
And along those lines, is there going to be a next AI that is after LLMs? It's even better.
I'm of the mind that LLMs are, when we talk about AGI and everything, that I think we're silly to think that it's just going to be a model. I think of LLMs and I think of these models, big or small, as neurons, very sophisticated. And one of them is probably, one big one is probably much more powerful than one of our neurons in our brains. But to get something that's really thinking like we are and all that, I think that you have to treat them that way, and you have to build a lot of additional system around them, you know, memory and context and all the systems to recognize connections between thoughts and ideas and logical paths of thinking. There's just a lot going on there, and I'm somewhat informed. My wife's a therapist. I've spent as she was getting her master's over the past few years, hearing a lot about cognitive neuroscience and diving into myself. We're incredibly sophisticated, models are, ourselves with the neurons and everything that have evolved over, billions and millions of years, not billions, but millions of years, and are much more sophistication in terms of audio input, video input, all of this. So I laugh when people talk about AI just being, we're just going to make an AGI is going to be a model, because it's going to have to be a much more sophisticated system built around it all. That's, I think, what is next, but it's not going to happen overnight. It's not something ChatGPT 6 is going to be or anything. It's going to have to be a much more sophisticated system. But it's coming. I don't think it's impossible, but it's not as close as I think some of the model providers want you to think it is, to keep their hype going and keep their funds flowing in.
This was great. I have to jump. Thank you so much for having me, Justin.
Pleasure.
Thanks for the great conversation, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Nice to meet you all in person.
Thank you. Yeah, I know, it's a pleasure. Now I can say we spoke.
Exactly. Nice to meet you, Emma.
Nice to meet you too, Kevin.
Yep.
Bye, Justin. Bye, Shindy.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh, looks like Kevin is gone as well. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining. This is my pleasure to be hosting this great conversation. And I hope everyone gets some great benefit out of this conversation. And please connect with the people that were in this chat as well, if you would like to connect with them. They are big influencers in this space, well, several of them, and I'm sure that they would appreciate to connect with you. All right. Thank you, everybody, and happy automating.